Welcome back to another episode of SmoothBrainEDH, where we have the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. This week, we have Phil from ThrabenU back on for some more casual gameplay, so let's see what they all brought to the table. Our first player today is Matt on Urtet, Remnant and Mimnarch. This 5-color Mirror Matters deck is all about flooding the board with mirror creatures and pumping up his mirrors with Urtet. He starts the game with the Steam Vents, Overgrown Tomb, Verdant Catacombs, Sourced Plowshares, Monumental Corruption, Legion of Loyalty, and Silvermere. Up next is Phil on Thalia and the Gitrog monster. This Abzan deck is focused around lands, hoping to play as many lands as possible to fuel powerful plays, while also slowing down Phil's opponents by making their creatures and non-basic lands enter tapped. He keeps a hand with a Swamp, Temple Garden, Vault of Champions, Boseiju Who Endures, Arid Mesa, Cultivate, and Secure Tribe Elder. Third is Chandler on Ezuri, Stalker of Spheres. This is actually our patron submitted deck list this week, sent us by Elite1, otherwise known as Branded, on our Discord. This is a Simic Proliferate deck, hoping to incrementally increase counters on permanents and players with as many cards with Proliferate as possible. Chandler keeps an Island, Otawar, Soaring City, Dreamroot Cascade, Jeweled Lotus, Forgotten Ancient, Thethukal, Inquiry Dominus, and Rolesque, Apex Hybrid. Last up is Jason on Osgir, the Reconstructor. This Boros deck is centered around artifacts, hoping to sacrifice them and copy them with Osgir's activated abilities. Jason starts the game with a Mountain, Sunbaked Canyon, Exotic Orchard, Darksteel Citadel, Boros Signet, Hedron Archive, and Reconstruct History. We're about to hop right into the game, but before that, go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. We post new gameplay videos every week, so you don't want to miss any of it. Big shout out to our patrons, we really appreciate all the support. Link to our Patreon in the description, as well as links to the deck lists, our social media, our podcast channel, and our public Discord server. Our channel is also partnered with Dragon Shield, so if you're looking to pick up any new sleeves or match-related products, check out our affiliate link in the description. We are also partnered with Inked Gaming, so if you're looking to make any custom playmats, use our affiliate link also in the description. Now, on to the gameplay.
Matt's up first, and he'll play a tapped Steam Vents and then pass the turn. Phil has a tapped Temple Garden, and then he'll pass to Chandler, who will play an Island, and then he'll free cast a Jeweled Lotus, and then he'll cast Ezuri off this, and then pass the turn to Jason, who plays Exotic Orchard and passes to Matt, who will play Verdant Catacombs, and then he'll fetch for a Savannah and cast Silvermere, then he'll pass to Phil. Phil will cast an Exploration, and then he'll play a Vault of Champions and an Arid Mesa. And then with the Arid Mesa, he'll fetch for his own Savannah, and then he'll cast Sakura Tribe Elder and pass the turn to Chandler, who will play Rejuvenating Springs, and then he'll cast Everflowing Chalice, kicked once. After this, he'll go to combat and swing for 3 commander at Jason, and then pass the turn to Jason, who plays Battlefield Forge, and then cast Boros Signet, and then we'll pass to Matt. Matt will shock himself with Overgrown Tomb, and then he'll cast Urtet. After this, he'll move to combat, untap his mirror that he used for mana, and then he'll pass to Phil. And on end step, Phil will sacrifice Sakura Tribe Elder for a Snow Swamp, and then he'll move to his turn. And he will immediately tap for 4 and cast Thalia and the Gitrog monster. He'll then play 3 lands, which are Snow Plains, Boseiju, and Godless Shrine, which he shocks in. And then to add insult to injury, he'll tap for 3 and cast Cultivate, finding a forest to the battlefield tapped and a plains to his hand. The turn is then passed to Chandler, who will cast a Canker Bloom, and then he'll play a Dreamroot Cascade and pass the turn. Jason plays a Mountainous Land for turn, and then he'll tap for 4 and cast Osgir, and then pass the turn to Matt. And on end step, Matt will cast Swords to Plowshares on the Thalrog monster. He'll then move to his turn and shock in a Stomping Grounds. He'll then cast Tezzeret the Seeker, and then minus him for a Skull Clamp. He then moves to combat, untaps his mirror, and passes the turn to Phil, who will start by cycling a Scattered Groves, then recast the Thalrog monster and play his plains, then pass the turn to Chandler, who starts off with an Opal Palace, and then he'll cast Forgotten Ancient. After this, he'll swing Canker Bloom at Tezzeret, and Matt won't block, so Tezzeret dies. Chandler will then pass the turn to Jason, and Jason starts off by casting Zerda, Ancient Trigger. Jason will also move to combat and swing for 4 commander at Chandler, who just takes it. He'll then play a Darksteel Citadel, sacrifice it to Osgir, and then he'll activate Osgir to make 2 Darksteel Citadels. The turn is then passed to Matt, who will start off with a Darksteel Mirror, triggering Urtet and the Ancient, and he Skull Clamps the Mirror token, drawing 2 cards, and then he'll move to combat and untap his mirrors. The turn is then passed to Phil, and he'll start off by moving in combat and swinging for 4 commander at Jason, who just takes it. He will then cast an Emeria Angel, Ancient Trigger, and then he'll cast Retreat to Emeria, another Ancient Trigger. The turn is then passed to Chandler, who will remove a counter from Ancient and put it on Ezuri on upkeep. He'll then cast Master Biomancer, and then play Otawara as land for turn. The turn is then passed to Jason, who will move to combat and swing for 4 at Phil, who just takes the commander damage. Jason will then cast a Hedron Archive, and thanks to Zerta, he's able to sacrifice it for 1 mana to draw 2 cards, then he'll play a basic Plains and activate Osgir for 2 to get 2 Hedron Archives. Using one of them, he'll cast a Mind Stone, and with the other, he'll pay the mana to sacrifice the Mind Stone and draw a card. He'll then pass the turn to Matt, who starts off with a tapped Hallowed Fountain. He'll then cast a Sarcomite Mirror, triggers, and then he'll clamp it, drawing 2 cards. He'll then move to combat and untap his mirrors, and then pass the turn to Phil, who will tap for 7 mana and cast Emeria Shepherd, Ancient Trigger. He'll then move to combat and swing at Jason again. Upon attacking, he'll sacrifice a Plains and draw a card, and Jason takes the damage. The turn is then passed to Chandler, who will move 7 counters from his Forgotten Ancient over to Master Biomancer. He'll then cast a Tekethal, triggering his Ancient, and it enters with 9 +1/+1 counters. He'll then move to combat and swing his Master Biomancer at Phil, who will just take 9. The turn is then passed to Jason, who will start off by sacrificing one of his archives to draw 2 cards. He'll then activate Osgir to exile Mind Stone, and he'll get 2 of them. This will get him up to exactly 9 mana, so he casts a Portal to Phyrexia. This triggers Forgotten Ancient, but Matt has a response, and he'll cast Fierce Guardianship, triggering the Ancient again. Jason then plays a Mountain, casts Goblin Welder, triggering Ancient, and then he'll pass the turn to Matt, who plays a Plateau. And then he'll cast a Cryptolith Rite, Ancient trigger, and then using it, he'll cast Monumental Corruption, targeting himself. He'll lose 5 and draw 5. This triggers the Ancient, and then he'll cast Leaded Mirror, triggering Urtet and the Ancient. And then after this, he'll move to combat and untap all his dudes. He'll then tap a mirror for a mana, and then use it to clamp the mirror. And then the turn is passed to Phil, who will immediately tap for 6 and drop Ancient Green Warden, and this will trigger Forgotten Ancient. He will then play a Plains from his graveyard. There are a lot of triggers on the stack. To start off, he'll get 2 1/1 birds, and then from his retreat, he'll give all his creatures +2/+2. Emeria Shepherd only has 1 legal target, so he'll return Sakura Tribuilder to the battlefield. And if you don't know, this is a little bit of a combo. Phil will sacrifice Sakura Tribuilder to get another Plains to the battlefield. This gets him another 2 birds, and his creatures get another +2/+2, and Sakura Tribuilder will end up back on the battlefield. He'll then repeat it again, and then again, but this time finding a swamp, which will return Sakura Tribuilder to the hand this time. He'll then recast the Elder, triggering Ancient, and he'll find a Snow Forest, triggering everything again. And Sakura Tribuilder ends up back in hand. He'll then play Arid Mesa from his graveyard and fetch with it, finding a Scrublands to the battlefield. And this will trigger landfall twice, and then of course twice again with the Green Warden. And of course, since he has 3 land drops, he'll play and fetch with the Arid Mesa again for an Indatha Triumph, and then there's 4 more landfall triggers. This is about to be a deadly combat. And so, thanks to 9 lands entering the battlefield this turn, and Ancient Green Warden, he now has 18 1/1 birds, and all the creatures that can swing this turn get +18/+18. And those creatures are 2 flyers, and then the Thalrog monster. Phil then goes to combat and says,
"Bleed for your lives."
Chandler says that while he has an intimidating board, not a single thing has trample, and Phil has 18 1/1 blockers. He also says he only has 1 board wipe in this deck list, which is a Cyclonic Rift, and Matt says the same thing. Jason admits that he has 2 board wipes in his deck, and that helps Phil decide that Jason is the one who will die in the air. He also swings Thalia and the Gitrog monster at Chandler, which will be lethal commander damage. Chandler will block with his Cankerbloom, and before damage, he will pay 1 to sacrifice it and proliferate. Thanks to Tekethal, he proliferates twice, and with Ezuri out, he'll draw 2 cards. Unfortunately, Jason will die here. Phil will then pass the turn to Chandler, and on end step he will pay 1 mana and 4 life, and then remove counters from Forgotten Ancient to give Tekethal an indestructible counter. Then on his upkeep he'll remove 5 counters from his Forgotten Ancient and put them on Ezuri. After this, Chandler will cast a Peregrine Drake, it enters with 9 counters, and then he'll untap 5 lands. Ancient will also trigger. He'll then tap for 3 colorless, 2 blue, and a green to cast Rolesque. This will trigger the Forgotten Ancient, it enters with 9 counters, and he forgets the ETB trigger. He'll have 1 colorless floating, and he'll use it with Opal Palace to float a blue, and then he'll tap for a green and cast Simic Ascendancy. There is absolutely no way Matt can let that resolve, so he'll counter it with a mana drain. Chandler then plays the Seed Core, and passes the turn to Matt. And you know what? Matt has kind of an insane turn, so I'm lazy. I'm gonna let him narrate this. Just remember, he has Urtet out, and every time he casts a mirror, he gets a token.
Hey guys, it's Matt here. It's gonna be one of those turns. I'm sorry. I start off by untapping, going to my upkeep, and then drawing a card. I play a snow-covered swamp per turn. I tap a mana to clamp a token to draw 2 cards. I tap 4 mirrors to cast a Karuk Clan Ironworks. I use the rest of my lands to play a Mirror Battlesphere. I sacrifice a mirror to go to 3 colorless. I pay 2 life and cast a Phyrexian Metamorph. as a copy of Mirror Battlesphere. I sacrifice a mirror, use the 2 colorless floating mana to clamp 2 mirrors to draw cards. I sacrifice one of the mirror tokens to KCI, use the mana to play a gold mirror. I sacrifice gold mirror to KCI, and then use that mana to clamp a token. I sacrifice a token to KCI to go to 3 colorless mana and play a shimmer mirror. I sacrifice a token to add 2 colorless to KCI. I clamp a dude and use the 1 floating to play a soul ring. I tap soul ring, use the floating mana to clamp a mirror. I then get to free cast a mirror enforcer. I use the floating 1 off the soul ring tap to clamp my mirror token made from the mirror enforcer. I play a mirror moon vessel. I clamp with the floating extra 1 to draw 2 cards. I then cast a mana crypt. I tap the mana crypt to play an Ichorclaw mirror. I sacrifice the mirror enforcer finally to KCI. I use the floating mana to clamp 2 tokens to draw 4 cards. I sacrifice Mirror Moon Vessel and Ichorclaw mirror to add 4 colorless mana. I use 3 of it to cast a Foundry Inspector. Using the 1 floating and the Foundry Inspector cost reduction, I get to play a Plague Mirror.
And he immediately sacrifices the Plague Mirror for 2 colorless mana, and then uses one of those mana to clamp the mirror he got off the Plague Mirror.
I cast a Mirror Mind Servant for free. I use a floating mana to clamp a dude. I play a Mox Opal. I sacrifice the Phyrexian Metamorph copy of Mirror Battlesphere in the Mirror Mind Servant. I then cast a Lodestone Mirror. I sacrifice the original Mirror Battlesphere to Krark Clan Ironworks. I equip Clamp on the Lodestone Mirror and then sacrifice it to KCI to draw 2 cards and add 2 colorless mana. I cast a Mirror Propagator. I use a floating mana to clamp a token. I sacrifice my Soul Ring to Krark Clan Ironworks. I use the floating mana here to cast a Scrap Trawler. I sacrifice Mana Crypt to Krark Clan Ironworks. I play a Mirror Galvanizer. I then cast a Jeweled Lotus. I sacrifice the Jeweled Lotus to Krark Clan Ironworks. I play an Alloy Mirror. I sacrifice the Alloy Mirror to grab my Mirror Mind Servant with the Scrap Trawler trigger and add 2 colorless mana through KCI. I cast a Mirror Mind Servant again. I clamp one of my Mirror tokens with the floating mana. I clamp my Mirror Mind Servant and then get a Mana Crypt with the Scrap Trawler trigger. I cast the Mana Crypt. I tap the Mana Crypt for 2 floating colorless and use 1 of it to play a Felwar Stone. I tap Mox Opal and the Felwar Stone for white. I then sacrifice Mox Opal to Krark Clan Ironworks in order to cast Mondrak Glory Dominus. I use my 1 floating colorless mana to clamp a mirror token. I sacrifice a mirror token to KCI. I use that mana to play a Hover Mirror. I use the floating extra 1 to clamp a token to draw 2 cards. I sacrifice Felwar Stone to KCI to return Mox Opal to hand. I cast a Mox Opal. I clamp a mirror token, and then my Mirror Propagator to get a Mirror Moon Vessel back to my hand and draw 4 cards. I play a Mirror Moon Vessel. I sacrifice a mirror token to KCI, and then clamp a mirror token. I cast a Mirror Sire. I use the floating colorless there to clamp a token. I sacrifice Mirror Sire to make 2 mirror tokens and get a Mirror Mind Servant back to my hand. I cast the Mirror Mind Servant. I sacrifice Mind Servant to KCI. I clamp 2 mirror tokens to draw 4 cards. I sacrifice a token to KCI. I then clamp 2 more tokens to draw 4 more cards. I sacrifice Mirror Moon Vessel to KCI. I then use that floating mana to clamp a Hover Mirror. Off of this, I finally have drawn my Mirror Retriever, which I then slam onto the table and cast. I demonstrate the loop where the class. For anybody who has not seen it, I sacrifice both a Foundry Inspector and a Mirror Retriever to KCI. With the Scrap Trawler trigger on the stack, I target the Mirror Retriever, then the Mirror Retriever targets the Foundry Inspector. This is actually a mana neutral loop if it wasn't for Urtet, which allows me to actually net a mirror or 2 because of Mondrak each iteration of this loop. I use this loop to make approximately 1 billion mirrors. This nets me infinite colorless mana, which I will then use to clamp enough mirrors to draw the rest of my deck. I then finally find and cast an Aetherflux Reservoir. I do 1 more iteration of the loop and have enough Storm Count to kill both Chandler and Phil.
And yeah, we are both super ultra mega dead, but Jesus Christ, look how big that Forgotten Ancient is. But yeah, through the manual storm turn of a century, Matt wins the game with an Aetherflux Reservoir. Good job, man. That storm turn took up over half of the actual gameplay video. Holy crap. I'm so sorry you had to sit through that, Phil. But I gotta say, that was a do or die moment for Matt, and a turn like that takes a lot of focus and brain power. Let us know what you guys thought down in the comments below, and of course while you're down there, check out the deck lists and all our other links down there. You might have noticed we actually have merch linked in our YouTube page, so if you're wanting to represent, please buy a shirt. And also don't forget to check out Phil Gallagher in ThrabenU. He is an awesome guy and was a pleasure to play with. He also does a lot of legacy content, so if you're interested in that, please, again, check his link out in the description. But that is enough for today, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to bed, so I hope you all have a smooth day.